most people find their lives unsatisfying in one way or another. They don't feel fulfilled with their current situation. They would want to be something more. They want something more, either materially, physically, spiritually. Modern man desires to be in a different situation. And it's really surprising because with so much abundance, with so many things available, you would think that the opposite would be true, that modern man would have no issues with fulfillment or purpose. You would think that he feels accomplished because now he's able to focus on the things he wants to instead of having to hunt and do all this backbreaking work simply to feed yourself. And even more strangely, primitive tribes, primitive men and women who do live out in the forest and who are hunting and foraging, they have less abundance and yet they seem to be more content with their existence than we do. And so in this video, we're going to discuss why this happens, how it correlates to desires, and how you can keep more simple desires. Modern life is unfulfilling in many ways, and so for the sake of time, I'm not going to be going over the specific ways in which modern life makes people devoid of fulfillment, purpose, respect, and all the other things. What I will say is that this unfulfilling life leads to us desiring something different, something more than this. And so this explains our obsession with things like entertainment, things like video games, where we immerse ourselves in a different, newer character, with our obsession with fantasizing about the future or the past, reminiscing about what we could have been or what we could be. It explains why our mind is always in the future, the past. It's always somewhere else other than the present. It's because we don't desire to be in the present moment. Not only that, but this also explains why consumerism is so rampant. We feel that void of purposelessness and not being fulfilled. We feel that dissatisfaction with life. And to fill that void, we consume entertainment, we indulge in these material things. Even things like sex, we indulge in sex, we indulge in all the superficial matters in an attempt to feel some level of fulfillment. What this leads to is an infinite list of desires, an infinite list of wants, and yet limited means to achieve those wants. So modern man, he wants more comfort. He wants more of this, more of that. He wants all these different things, and yet because of not only his huge list of desires, but also the constraints the society imposes on him, he is unable to actualize all of these. There are some goals that are simply too great or too out of his control to directly influence and attain. And this leads to dissatisfaction. It's what leads to this perpetual disappointment in life. Because you have all these goals, you have all these things you want to achieve, and not all of them can be actualized. Not all of them are within your grasp or within your direct control. There's also the modern distractions like entertainment, like junk food, like all these, like advertising, like all these things, mainstream media that takes our attention off of our goals. So even if we have things that we want to achieve and that we can achieve, many people don't because they're so distracted by consumerism. Primitive man does not seem to struggle with the same issues of not being fulfilled, of feeling dissatisfied with life. And I believe a lot of this is allotted to the fact that they don't have a lot of material. They're not very abundant in stuff. We desire a lot because we have a lot, because we have the ability to produce and reproduce a lot of things. In contrast, primitive man only has very minimalist, simple tools, and he lives in a very simple environment. He doesn't have like all these complex urban networks. It's just a small, maybe, plot of land that has some vegetables planted, that has some vegetables growing, maybe a few teepees, a few huts. He's with his family. And this life is so simple that his desires reflect that as well. He also has simple wants. He doesn't really want more clothes. He doesn't want more entertainment. He doesn't want more of anything. He just wants food, water, sex, love, and that's essentially it. And he only ever wants these things when he needs them. If he doesn't need it, once he's attained these things, he's fulfilled, he's fine. He's content with just being present in the moment. If you observe tribes like the Hadza or the Bushmen, you'll see that this is the case, that when there is leisure time available, after they're done hunting and skin doing all the work of the day, they're content with just sitting there being in nature because their desires are so simple that not only are they able to be actualized, but actualizing those goals is in their own full control. It's a fully autonomous pursuit of that goal. If we want to get a raise, like a modern man wants a raise in his job, he needs to ask his boss. And you can work hard, you can do everything, but ultimately the decision, whether or not that goal of getting paid more gets actualized, is in the hands of somebody else whose opinion you cannot influence. In contrast, primitive man, if he wants food, he organizes his team. He decides what weapon he's going to use, where he's going to go, how he's going to hunt it. The group is small enough so that every member has their say, has a meaningful contribution to the decisions made. It's a goal that is fully autonomous and in control of the individuals participating. And so that's also another important thing that modern men don't really have a lot of. It's freedom of attaining their goals, freedom of actualizing it fully and taking control of not the results, but taking control of the methods, how they pursue it. But the point is, they desire simple things, and thus achieving the goals that they want, achieving the things that they want, is relatively not easy, but simple. It's in their control. They know exactly what they want, and once they've attained it, they feel fulfilled. It's this simplicity of life that leads to happiness, that leads to fulfillment. And some of these tribes don't even have words for things like fulfillment and happiness because they just experience it as a normal way of being. For your actionable step, you want to delete all your social media. Now, when we have social media installed, we often are influenced by the stuff we see. And even if you don't want to believe it, that's fine. But subconsciously, your brain is registering all the stuff you consume. And many times, the stuff that we consume, we see people with very big, jacked physiques. We see people who are athletic. We see people who have this one diet, then this other guy who says, no, do this diet. This one guy who's doing this one business model, then another guy who's doing a different one. When we have all this content, when we see all these people doing different things, we end up wanting to do them as well because we want their results more often than not. And when we are constantly in that loop, we end up desiring way too much. Our desires become more complex, they become inauthentic. We say, oh, I want to get big, but you don't know that that's not coming from you. That desire is coming from the content you saw with a guy who had the ideal physique that you would want. You say, oh, I want to do this business model, and then in a week you switch because you saw another video on TikTok of a guy saying, oh, don't do social media, don't do a marketing agency, do Facebook ads, do something else. It's like your attention is always hopping from one place to the other when you're on social media in this consumerism loop. And so delete everything. Delete your social media. Do not cloud your brain with all that unnecessary information. The second part of this actionable step is to remove all the unnecessary things from your environment. So this is a very minimalist approach that you want to take to your environment and your setting. Anything that doesn't serve you a purpose, anything that is distracting you, or anything that is harming you more than it's doing good, get rid of it. Get rid of anything that might distract you and take you off the path. Because having more stuff, again, like we said before, abundance leads to more complex desires. Abundance leads to a it adds an unnecessary complexity to our lives. So if you live with all these unnecessary things, you may be more comfortable, but you won't feel more satisfied with life. It'd be much more beneficial to get rid of these things, to have less, but to have more within. So that is your actionable step. Delete your social media and then remove everything that's unnecessary from your environment. I'm actually going to give you a framework you can use to identify what is necessary, what you need, and what you don't need. Firstly, does it feel good? Yes or no? Secondly, is it necessary? Yes or no? The first question, you don't really need it to identify whether or not something is necessary, but it just helps you to get used to ignoring your desires. It gets you used to the feeling of wanting to do something, but then resisting it and not doing it. So, when you're changing your environment, when you're approaching life in general, ask yourself frequently, do I need this thing? If you do, keep it in your life. If you don't, get rid of it. That's going to be all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, like, subscribe, comment, interact with the video so it gets pushed in the algorithm. If you have any criticisms, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you thought. If you disagree, agree. You can also check out my Medium page where I post about similar topics, but many of them don't get posted on my YouTube, and many of them are on similar topics and go much more into depth about things like religion, about things like self-improvement, about philosophy, about politics. So you can check that out, link in the description. And that's all. Have a good day, guys.